Shame is an artifact of humanity. When we die, it is buried with us, to be excavated and to befuddle the archaeologists of distant futures. Welcome to Night Vale. Ladies, gentlemen, a wondrous thing has happened in Night Vale. I will admit that before today I was in no fit state to properly report on it. Between the crash of the mood regulation system and the subsequent coffee shortage, the effects of which were likely exacerbated by the mental trauma incurred by mood regulation, I am afraid I was incapable of properly conveying the single most important news item to have occurred in our town in the past month and a half. StrexCorp is officially gone. Night Vale is an independent city once more, ruled by our mysterious, unison-speaking city council, who have at last returned from wherever they were for the past few months. Our businesses have been returned to their rightful owners, those who survived the corporate takeover, and our minds and emotions have been released from whatever strange biotechnological prison they were being kept in. I would like to say, listeners, that I am sorry. I have, quite literally, not been myself. Many of the things I said in previous broadcasts were likely false. I have not yet had the opportunity to listen through all of them so that we can issue corrections, but rest assured that they are coming. As for whom we have to thank for uprooting that fungoid blight of a corporation from our dry and dusty soil, it is, in fact, Aperture Laboratories. Now, don't get me wrong, they aren't, strictly speaking, the heroes of the day. They do murder innocent people with alarming regularity for a place that is purely interested in science, but we must admit that they are, at least, better than StrexCorp, who murdered innocent, guilty, morally ambiguous, corporeally unclear, physically disabled, constitutionally vaporous, and even scientifically minded people, with indiscriminate glee and no clear pattern, so that it was very difficult to get used to, and also took a much larger chunk out of our population. Fortunately, in this case at least, the director of Aperture Laboratories seemed perfectly happy to murder these clearly non-innocent people, and so gassed them all to death in an uncomfortably small room deep beneath the Aperture facility. I was told by a reliable Aperture employee that the chamber was subsequently filled with other raw sewage. It seems as though the director of Aperture likes being bought up by a cavalcade of semi-human slugs even less than we do. Do be warned, listeners. Aperture are not our saviors. They are an evil laboratory run by a homicidal AI whose sole goal in life is to run human beings through gauntlets of tests until they die. Night Vale citizens have been allowed to return from the testing tracks after only a few months of testing, due to the heroic intercession of Carlos, our community's resident android and recently hired aperture scientist. The natural Night Valian immunity to neurotoxin seems to be helping as well. You may remember, I do not know if you do, that Carlos used to be completely human. Apparently, before he was unceremoniously murdered by StrexCorp employees, the AI in charge of Aperture Labs had copied his brain onto a hard disk, admiring his passion for and knowledge of all things science. This seems like an odd choice, considering that Carlos, shortly before that, viciously killed the android avatar of that particular Aperture AI who happens to run the entire facility. But it's not for me to say whether this was a sensible decision or not. I'm certainly glad it happened the way it did. It was through a very odd, and very long, series of coincidences that Carlos ended up as our station's new operating system. I can't go into it all right now, but I'm sure you know how it is, listeners. 1 minute you're being shot in the back, next thing you know, you're a computerized version of yourself, and you're running the local radio station you used to love so much, and helping to organize the insect collection, and having movie nights with the radio host, and building yourself an android body so you can hold hands with him, and shutting down mood regulation so he can have free will because you think that will make you happy. But then it turns out that the radio host is a real jerk, and yells at you for things that aren't your fault, and refuses to listen when you try to explain about StrexCorp, and calls you really offensive names. And maybe it was just because the coffee was gone, or maybe he was still a little brain damaged from the sudden shutdown of mood regulation, but it doesn't really matter because nothing excuses that kind of name-calling, even if you did call him a lead-tongued moron with a serious coffee addiction and a truly disgusting disregard for human life. Even if you did tell him that the meat sack he chose to walk around in was more deserving of the pleasant and non-confrontational mind of a sea slug. Even if you did say you wished he was back under mood regulation because even though it made him into a complacent idiot, it at least made him into a cheerful, pleasant, attentive complacent idiot who listened to what other people had to say. Even if you said all those things, I'm sure he wouldn't be angry anymore or hold any of it against you, and in fact would forgive everything if you would just please, please call him back. I'm such an idiot. Listeners, I really didn't want to bring this up on the air, but I can't keep it in anymore. I hate to have to say it out loud, but maybe some good will come of it in the end. Carlos and I, well, we had a fight. I don't even really remember what it was about. Maybe StrexCorp or something like that. It doesn't really matter anyway. The point is, I said a lot of things I didn't mean, and he said a lot of things that I really, really hope he didn't mean, and we haven't really spoken since. It was 2 days ago, and I don't really know what to do. I want to apologize to him, but what if he doesn't want to hear from me at all? What if trying to say anything will only make it worse? I wouldn't be surprised. I'd be heartbroken. I'd be distraught. But I wouldn't be surprised. After everything I said, I wouldn't be surprised. I doubt he's listening, but Carlos, I am so sorry. I am sorry I got angry with you. I am sorry I yelled. I am sorry for everything that I said. I was completely in the wrong. You were right. StrexCorp was a bad thing, and I didn't understand. Steve Carlsberg explained everything to me. That's how sorry I am, Carlos. That's how much I admit I was wrong. I went and found Steve Carlsberg and had a conversation with him and didn't interrupt once while he explained everything that happened since we took the station back. I didn't even make fun of his stupid tinfoil hat or his poorly kept apartment. You were absolutely, completely right, and I am very, very sorry. And I love you. Right here in front of all these listeners, I love you very, very much. And I understand if you don't want to keep doing this whole relationship thing, or if you don't even want to talk to me anymore. Just let me know one way or the other, okay? I won't try to change your mind. I'll listen and I'll accept whatever you decide. I promise. Just text me or something. Please. Sorry, listeners. I just had to give it a shot, you know? Just in case. I'll keep you all posted if anything changes. So now, an editorial from the woman from the sand wastes. Hello, Nightvale. I am called Shell. Probably you will know me as Woman from Sand Wastes, maybe even as Woman from Aperture. I am not these things. I am Shell, and this is all. I write this for Cecil to play on his radio show because I think you will all listen. Do you people completely lose your minds? Are you blind? Why you continue to send your friends and family to Aperture? Why do you tolerate this slaughterhouse to exist? You do not think it is wrong that so many will die? Aperture is evil place and GLaDOS is evil thing. I do not know how poor Carlos told her not to kill, but she will not listen very long. I know these things. I have been there, I have seen. There is nothing of humanity left in this creature, nothing of mercy or of pity. She is cruel and evil thing, and you must not let her stay. When you will come to realize this, I will stay to help with the destruction of her. Away from that, who put Wheatley into Little Dog? You should not let him run around by himself. He will get into trouble. At least you will always keep a leash on him. And tell him to stop saying all of the apologies to me. I am very tired of telling him I forgive. Also, good job you, who made cute little dog body. It's very good. You should be very proud. I am glad Wheatley finds so good a friend here in Nightvale. So, that is all I have. When Aperture becomes very crazy evil, I will still be here to rescue strange little town. Do svidaniya. Oh. Carlos texted me. He's coming over to talk. That's all it says, just... we need to talk. I'll be there soon. That doesn't sound good, does it, listeners? I'm afraid this may well be the end of Carlos and Cecil. That wonderful, lovely little and is soon to be buried, I fear. We will just be... Carlos. Cecil. Separate. Very, very tragically separate. But I will be strong. I promised I would not argue or try to change his mind. I promised I would listen. And I will. I will listen with every last straining thread of my attention, just in case this is the last time I ever get to hear him speak with the and between us. I will remember every word. I will remember every inflection, every gesture, every movement of his beautifully made synthetic brown eyes that, through some kind of technological wizardry, are almost exactly the same color as his real human eyes were. I will remember the oil and copper smell of his wiring. I will remember the very slight electric hum in his voice. I will remember these things. and then I will bury them under the dust of my withered heart, and I will try to forget them. And I will not succeed. And I will be glad, and I will hate myself, both in equal measure, because I will not forget these things, not ever. I will always want to remember them, because it will remind me that at the very least I can still feel pain. I will never wish to not feel pain. I have lived without pain, and this is what it bought me. Nevertheless, listeners, nevertheless, I will listen, and I will hope, and I will likely pray, although I do not know to whom. But mostly I will listen, and I will say nothing, and I will never, ever let myself forget how much I love him. And now, right now, I will give you the weather. I suppose, it being close to closing time, I'd better wrap things up here. We've gotten word from the mayor's office that Marcus Vanston is stepping down as mayor. He is ceding the post to his runner-up, the faceless old woman who secretly lives in your home, as she was the only other survivor of the mayoral race. She currently has plans to rebuild the downtown sector where the meteor fell, although she has no plans to ever actually be seen by anyone. At the press conference, she answered reporters' questions by speaking directly into their ears from a space just slightly behind them. We still don't know what she looks like, but we all agree that her plans for the city are good ones. The sentient fire that has taken up bowling with the tiny army from beneath the pin return of Lane 5 at the Desert Flower Bowling Alley and Arcade Fun Complex, which recently bought and seems capable of leaving one of the few condos left scattered around town, has announced to anyone who would listen that it is happy to help us rebuild our community, since we have given it such a warm welcome. It is applying for the job of Waste Management Coordinator, a post that has stood empty since it was vacated in an immense hurry by Weston Packard after, well, technically during, the Great Night Vale landfill explosion of 1965. Although many of the businesses in town are now without management, a surprising number of Night Vale citizens, usually former employees or family members, are stepping up to fill the roles. Staple establishments such as the White Sand Ice Cream Parlor, the Sunrise Car Wash on Oak Street, and Big Rico's Pizza are all slowly getting back into business after the tragic losses of their owners and managers. Somewhat relatedly, intern Jess has constructed a body for her metal ball. Aperture Labs have made it clear that they don't want the thing back, so Jess made it a little robot dog body so that it can get around town on its own. So if you see what appears to be a large metal dog with a single staring blue eye instead of a head, don't be alarmed. It's not a monstrosity, it's just Wheatley. Also be sure not to listen to anything it says. It may be cuter now, but it's still a moron. All over Night Vale, our community is slowly getting into the arduous process of rebuilding. And as for Carlos and I, we're also rebuilding. It isn't going to be easy. With everything that's happened, both of us are still trying to puzzle out who we ourselves are, much less figuring out how to run a working relationship. But we're trying. And it's good to have help sometimes. Carlos remembers a lot of things that I don't, and I remember a lot of things that he doesn't. I'm teaching him how to cook again. He's playing me old broadcasts that he has saved from before the fire. I'm helping him remember how to do things that aren't science. He's helping me remember how to do things that aren't radio. It isn't a perfect system. Far from it. But it's working. And I think it's worth it. From what I remember, it's really, really worth it. And it says something, doesn't it, that we fell in love again? That even after all that happened to each of us, after the mutilations of our personalities, minds, and in one or two cases bodies, that when brought back together we instantly fell in love again. That must count for something. It isn't going to be easy piecing our lives back together, but, well, nothing worth having is ever easy to get, is it? We learned that last time with the coffee. And I'm beginning to think that as much as I need coffee to live, I think I need Carlos more. I think that if I'm ever going to really be Cecil again, it'll have to be as, well, half of Cecil and Carlos. Because I think that's the closest to the truth I can ever get. And maybe if I try to be the Cecil he remembers, I'll end up much, much better than the real Cecil I was. I think that is how Carlos and I define each other. I think that is how it is meant to be. I think we both want to be the person the other thinks we are. And I think that is the most anyone can hope for. Stay tuned next for the rest of your lives, beginning the moment you arbitrarily choose as a starting point. I myself have a life to collect and piece together, a life to resume even as it is reconstructed, a life to rebuild. And if by some chance only half of the pieces of my life are left, maybe only half of Carlos's are left too. And by putting all of our pieces together, we can build one good, sturdy, beautiful life. Better than either was before. It is at least something to hope for. May you all have such bright and beautiful hopes in your lives. Good night, Night Vale. Good night. Blue Sky Glow Cloud has been a production of The Internet. It was written by SJ, that's me, and produced by me as well. The voices of Blue Sky Glow Cloud were also all me. Original music by Disparition and Aperture Science Psychoacoustic Laboratories. Most of it can be found online at disparition.info or disparition.bandcamp.com. Additional musical contributions in this episode were Lullaby for a Broken Heart by Mindful Wrath. Today's weather was Pretend by Mindful Wrath. More information can be found at soundcloud.com/mindfulwrath. Portal and all related characters, devices, and scenarios belong to Valve. Today's proverb. Thank you all so much. Every last one of you. This has truly been one of the best experiences of my life, and I couldn't have done it without your support. All of us here at Blue Sky Glow Cloud owe you more than I really have time to say. So instead, I guess we'll just say thanks. From Cecil. From intern Dana. From Carlos, Alpha, and Beta. From Carolyn. From intern Raphael. Zachel. From Kevin. From intern Jess. Oh, and from Wheatley! And from me, Joseph Fink, the one and only. I mean, SJ. Still the one and only, though. Thank you.